Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, Asar Imhotep, with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. And today's presentation is titled Wakanda Forever, a Bantu perspective on the famous African pose. We'll have more for you in just a moment. Peace and blessings once again. On August the 29th, we lost a great actor, poet, playwright, and overall good human being. We all know as Mr. Chadwick Boseman, due to a 4-year battle with colon cancer. And it came as a shock because he was 43 years of age, which is very young. He's only a few years older than myself. And, we did not know much about this. Well, we didn't know anything about his particular condition because he did not tell the public. And so, all deaths comes as a surprise for a lot of us, well, most of them. But we know that, we have to go. But it was shocking because more so we understood that he had so much more to do. And we only saw things getting better and greater for him. So the shocker is that he was in his prime. And he played very significant roles in icons like James Brown and Thurgood Marshall, as well as Jackie Robinson. But he's had a number of roles and features in television and things of that nature. But his most famous, of course, role was that of the Black Panther in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so is great as the Black Panther film that came out in 2018 was overall. One of the main things that stuck out and resonated and became part of the general culture worldwide was the Wakanda greeting, which was the right arm over left arm crossed over the shoulders like this. And it resonated with a lot of people for many different reasons. And this particular discussion is going to be focused on that pose because there has been much speculation as to where that pose came from. And so, we want to kind of just have a moment to, converse about that particular pose and to show the significance in the African traditions and where that originates. Well, we don't know where it originates, but where it is well known on the continent, and to give us some greater context. So, with that said, I'm going to share my screen so that we can have some visuals with us that you will appreciate, hopefully. And so we can see that up there now. So, as discussed previously, the title of this is Wakanda Forever, a Bantu perspective on the famous African pose. And so this is the Wakanda pose. And I think this was actually from the Black Panther film itself. And, or this may be Civil War. We don't know. I think this is the Civil War uh, film that this was in, or Infinity Wars, one of them. But this is or one variation, because this one has Chadwick Boseman's character T'Challa with the hands, the arms crossed over the chest, but with the the fingers, uh, out and open. And so, other variations that you'll see will have it with his fist closed. So, as we see right here. And again, this particular greeting was, it reverberated around the world, and you see people, utilizing this pose everywhere they go. And so you can see when people went to go see the movie that, they went all out in representing, the characters in the film. And of course, as we can see with the brother on the far left in the white, and the sister in the center with the blue, and the brother in the back with the doing the Wakanda pose, and the young man that's also in the front. So you can't talk about Wakanda without doing the pose. So you can see that it has reverberated as part of the, kind of Comic-Con, as you can see in the background, it says Wakanda Con, comic book culture. And so, but it has moved beyond the comic book culture. And so this is, I believe, at Harvard University, a group of African American and African Black women who are graduating from law school. And so they decided to take a kind of a class picture, utilizing the Wakanda pose. And even in the context of weddings. So you see people, posing at the weddings, with the Wakanda Forever pose. And so even though it is, very meaningful for Black people around the world, others outside of the stereotypical Black experience in culture have also adopted and takes their photos, with this pose, as we can see, right here with this group of people. So it even made itself into the sports world, you know, and even your brother here, even though this photo here wasn't taken, as a result of the Black Panther movie, because I did this in 2015 at my last trip to Egypt. So, but along those lines, in terms of this pose, you know, people have even went into the ancestral realm and dug up, for instance, in terms of artwork, Harriet Tubman, to, whether it was a joke or not, it's interesting that even Harriet Tubman got in on, the Wakanda Forever uh, culture, hype, whatever you want to call it. And, it is from here that, a lot of folks have been wondering, where exactly this particular, pose comes from. And so Ryan Coogler, in an article stated that the pose was inspired by three things, and that is the pose as we see on the statuettes and on ancient Egyptian artwork, as you saw me. And actually, this is the top portion of the um, statue that you see, saying here. And I want to say this is Hatshepsut's temple or whatnot. So it's the same drawing there, but from the pharaonic pharaohs, or the pharaonic, culture of the pharaohs in ancient Kemet. And also he noted that there was some statuettes that he saw in West Africa. He didn't say exactly where, but he noted that that was, one of the inspirations. And not only that, also the sign that you do like this actually means hug, and I guess, kind of in a a narrow context, kind of like love and embrace, but it's also part of the American Sign Language sign. So, you know, seeing all of these three probably in a certain type of context inspired him to incorporate that into the film. So that's exactly, what we see. But the the film itself, or the pose itself, actually goes beyond the pharaonic experience, so to speak. And it's interesting that some years ago, way before the Black Panther, was even shot and filmed and was released to the public, there was a YouTube video that I was watching about Congolese music. And in the video clip that I saw, they were kind of following certain members of the band, in the village. And there was this one scene where one of the band members was walking just on a kind of a normal strip or street in the village, and there was an elder sitting to his left. And when he was passing the elder, he put his arms in the crossing pose and kind of, bent down a little bit and greeted the elder, and the elder greeted him back with the same pose. So when I saw on Black Panther that they were doing this, I assumed that, during Ryan Coogler's deep research when trying to create this, imaginary world of Wakanda, but kind of base it and be inspired by authentic African culture and experiences, that he drew from the Congo. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So this is why this discussion here is going to be very significant, because, even if you don't believe in the concept, this might add some pseudo evidence, so to speak, of a concept called, ancestral memory. And if, ancestral memory is involved, it would be interesting to discover, publicly, if Ryan Coogler has done a DNA test, where his genetics pull from. But saying that to say that this is a common pose and greeting in the Congo. And we must distinguish this, because in ancient Egypt, even though Ryan Coogler was inspired by the pharaoh's pose, the pharaoh's pose is only used in representation of a deceased pharaoh. And so they did not utilize this in any form, to my knowledge, as a greeting. But when you come into the Congo, they greet each other like that. So that's why I thought that he, had some knowledge of Congo culture, and they may have, and it just wasn't presented in that particular article. So uh, who knows, at this point. But that leads, us into our discussion here. So, when I seen the Black Panther film, and of course saw uh, the poses that were being done all throughout the film, I wanted to see if there was any kind of documentation which would give context and would first solidify that what I saw in the Congo video regarding the musicality, that that wasn't just a kind of a one-off thing, because it's possible that they just knew each other, and then that was a greeting amongst themselves, kind of like how you know friends or homeboys had their own unique handshakes or whatnot. And so I wanted to see if that greeting which I saw in the Congo was part of the larger culture. And so I came across this journal article titled Congo Atlantic Body Language, and is written by Barbaro Martinez Ruiz. And he notes in the text that the gesture, arms crossed on the chest, is called Jilabetela, or Luyu and Jilu, or Jilulu, and Inkutekese Moko, and these are individuals who he interviewed, in the process of the research of Congo body language. And that is Intino Nzaku Navunda, Simiao Kwanzambi Mundele, and Francisco Lusolo, respectively. And so he goes on to give the context for the gesture of the arms crossed on the chest. And so he says that the sources in Mbanza, Congo, and Mbanza is just a word meaning city or village, or sometimes used as a word for capital, like the capital city. But the sources in Mbanza, Congo, all stated that the gesture means that communication among two parties is real, that it is happening. Alternatively, the same gesture can mean meditation and imply that the person making the gesture is concentrated on himself. The final meaning described by these offered by Navunda, Mundele, and Lusolo, and the one that matches Kavazi's description, is a salutation, greeting, or welcome. Robert Ferris Thompson in The Four Moments of the Sun identified this gesture as Tuluwalwa Luumbu, and also stated that the arms crossed upon the chest were a salutation. Thompson described it as a core gesture used in the folk dance named rumbu or rumba yambu, and still performed in Cuba today. So there's a lot to take away from this quote here. So one, it verifies that the arms crossed over the chest is in fact a greeting, a common greeting in the culture of the Congo. So what I saw wasn't just a random, kind of isolated greeting between two individuals who knew each other. And so, but secondly, that this is also, or this gesture has many different layers to it. So it has more than one application and meaning. One which includes that the communication between two parties is real or authentic. So we are authentically communicating at this point. And also that it can be a sign of meditation, and a gesture of one being concentrated on oneself. And we'll get more into what that means later. And so, the author, Dr. Ruiz, also mentioned Dr. Robert Ferris Thompson in this book called The Four Moments of the Sun. And I recommend, if you have a chance to get this book, It's a big, coffee table book, with a lot of artwork, because Robert Farris Thompson is an African art historian. And so he goes and shows in the text these, for example, these two photos. And so on the left, remember that he noted that not only is this sign present in the Congo, but as a result of the transatlantic slave holocaust and those Africans that were brought over here in the so-called New World, it is found itself in Cuba. So on the left-hand side here, this is you see kind of an elder. He's actually dancing, and you see it in the middle of the dance right there. So you'll see, it's hard to kind of see, but there's a sister behind, him, as they're kind of doing this, you know, uh, kind of unison swinging, move or whatnot, that you kind of see like a lot in like salsa, and then again it's rumba. So if you're familiar with how to rumba and or whatnot, you can imagine the kind of moves that is going on right here. And then secondly, you see on the right hand side from the Congo itself, this kind of terracotta, you know, uh, carving or whatnot with the Congo sign, which again, according to Robert Farris Thompson, is Tuluwa Lwa Luumbu. And so you'll find it in a lot of Congo artwork. So this is very significant for what we see. And so continue with Robert Farris Thompson. There's a text called Africanisms in American Culture, and it was edited by Joseph E. Holloway. Robert Farris Thompson has an article in that text called Congo Influences on African American Artistic Culture. And in that, he adds that when the arms are crossed on the chest, that it is a symbol for self-encirclement in silence. And as I state here, he notes that this poser is retained by African Americans and kept this strong symbolic sense of wordlessness. Thompson recalled that in 1980, he saw a black man on the New Haven City Green cross his arms before his chest to end a conversation. And so he goes into detail and states that this sign signaled that he had no more to say. Stewart has seen the same emblem of negation among the Gullah of South Carolina, used in slightly combative situations where a person crossing arms on chest is not arguing per se, but wishes to communicate that he definitely does not like what is being laid on him. So this is very, very significant because it adds another layer to this particular pose. And so it can be used to end the conversation, saying, I've had enough. Maybe the temperature is getting a little too hot in terms of the subject matter, where it could be too sensitive or whatnot, or simply that I'm just not feeling what is being seen, what is being given to me in terms of words or whatnot. And sometimes you'll see women do this when there's some bad news. You'll see black women do this. And matter of fact, if any of y'all watched Jada Pinkett Smith, when her and Will Smith were sitting down at the Red Table Talk, you know, discussing Jada Pinkett Smith's entanglement, so to speak, there was a part in the conversation where she was like, it's all love. It's all love, in terms of having to explain to the public this particularly private issue. So she was using the pose in the same way as what is being described here. Like, she doesn't like what's being laid on her, or like it's a difficult situation, and this sign. So it's still prevalent in many areas of African American culture, even to this date. So that was something that's significant. And as I mentioned earlier, it survives in Afro Cuban communities. And there's a a woman author, Lydia Cabrera, who witnessed a Congo ritual expert known as an Nganga in Havana, Cuba, cross his arms, thus signaling hauteur, or pride and self-importance and reserve. And so this is, I take this based upon a lot of other research that connects culturally, linguistically, philosophically, etc., the Congo and ancient Kemet. And having that solid scientific basis, I wonder if what we see in terms of the pharaohs, like we're seeing right here with Akhenaten with his arms crossed. Remember that these are representations of the king when they are deceased. So a king that is alive doesn't have his arms crossed because these are funerary gestures in ancient Kemet. But it may have the same type of symbolism in terms of being reserved. And remember that the mouth is closed, to be silent in some context. And we see a variant of this type of symbolism even in the Congo. So this is on the left hand side, this is a Stittite tomb image from the Congo, and you can see, just as what we see in the ancient Egyptian tradition, the arms folded. And even for those who have seen the film The Black Panther, remember that when he was being buried, the Black Panther, as a rite of passage, to take the mantle of the Black Panther and the kingship of Wakanda, when they were burying him, he had to fold his arms across the chest like this. And over on the right hand side of this image, you see a terracotta carving from the 12th through the 14th century of a kneeling woman. And this is from the Middle Niger or Mali civilization in West Africa. So, we kind of see the same thing. So it's possible that this could represent mourning, and we'll see why in a little bit. And so this is a series of the gestures that, coming from Ruiz's article, that uh that are the arms crossed, just different variants, I should say, of the arms cross gesture, and the different names, regional names of these different of the same pose and their meaning behind it. And so, before we get into that, we should notice that the according to the detailed article, like the arms cross again signals many different things, but one of the things that it signifies again is the enclosing of oneself, reserving, kind of blocking and protecting from some kind of, I don't want to say evil, but kind of bad vibes, so to speak. And it is a gesture of denial and self-control. When this gesture is made, it is noted that the lips are also firmly sealed. So remember what I said, that when you see this, the lips are sealed, because there's no, in the funerary context, again, the dead do not speak in that sense. But as far as the living person, it's kind of a sign of constraint and self-control. And so you're not only controlling your body, but more so what you say. And so you don't want to escalate something that, can be de-escalated as a result of having reserve and discernment in one's speech. And so that usually means to be silent and to not speak on either the subject any further or at all, period. And so you'll find, for example, in South Africa, a hieroglyph that has a finger over the lips like this. And it's a word for the basically onomatopoeia, meaning shh, meaning, saying silence or quiet. But also, it has a double meaning. It also means wisdom. And you can see that throughout these African wisdom traditions, silence is equated to wisdom. And so the pose is also used to in terms of denying uh, or denial against the misery of death. And but as mentioned, also the denial of speech itself. And so I'm reading here, when a Congo person crosses their arms across their chest, it means you may do anything you want, but we are not going to talk to you. Therefore, the situation is done and finished. And so when you see carvings having the arms crossed over the chest, it also communicates respect or anguish. And so the word for anguish or mourning or whatnot is kiaji or kiadi in Kikongo. And so that's why, I hypothesize that in the Mali context, what you're seeing is a woman grieving. And I want to say that I've actually seen this pose of a woman like this in ancient Kemet, but I could not recall off the back. I had to, look through some more of my books. So I don't want to say that is there in terms of a sign of mourning, but, you know, so with that said, continuing, the Tuluwaku or Lwa Luumbu, when exalted in stone statuaries, can also warn the members of a community not to keep alive the differences which separated the dead man from the members of his clan or family. And so it is also like a sign when you see it in a statuette, kind of being a reminder to the people to settle their differences, not to take the differences to the grave, you know. And so and to move on with life with a clean slate and to let it be. And so so this is a kind of a sign of reconciliation in many respects. So as we can see from the screen right here, that, and these are just the different names that you see on the bolded on the left, or kind of in the center, but in the left hand part of the text, that, it can represent sorrow and lamentations, as I mentioned earlier, to kind of block your body or lock up against, kind of damaging energy or vibes, as you want to say. But it's also that something is enough. I've had enough of what is going on right here. But it's also a sign of a respect to the elders. And so, like, when I saw in that video clip the man, bowing to the elder like this with his arms crossed, it was showing not only in terms of a greeting, but also a sign of respect to the elder. And along the lines of sorrow and lamentation, crying, also the responsibility and the call to members of the community for help. And so when somebody is like this, they have an issue, they're also calling for help. And so as we mentioned earlier, that conversation is real and that is happening. So this is an authentic, viable communication, meditation, and or to be concentrated on oneself. And of course, as a salutation, greeting, or welcome. And so, with this allows for us to really kind of get a greater context of the pose, which, we find in the Black Panther film, and to kind of give us some cultural context, for why. So if we see one another greeting like this, just know that it is part of our ancestral memory and culture coming back to life, and showing us, how we should greet one another with strength and with love. And so, with this being the American Sign Language gesture, saying for hug and embrace. And, so there's much that we can, take away from that. So with that, this conversation isn't long. Just wanted to drop that on you. Just wanted to say, rest in peace, our good brother Chadwick Boseman. Thank you for the example that you have set in many different layers in terms of life, and in strength, and just, inspiring us to be the best of who we can be. And so with that, I will say peace and blessings to you all, and Wakanda forever. Peace.